With the president, we briefed the president on the trip that we just made to Iraq, and we're pleased at the progress that the military is making. We recognize that there's still significant difficulties, including the importance of forming a government and forming it soon. It's a message that we carry to the Iraqis as well. The president is obviously committed to staying the course. I happen to support him on that, and I appreciate the candor that he's been displaying in his speeches and town hall meetings. Again, he appreciates, as we do, the urgency of forming a unity government in Iraq and continuing to make progress, but that progress is still very slow and very long and very tough, and it is keyed to a great degree on the training of the Iraqi military.
I'm Congressman Schwartz of Michigan, was on Codell McCain to Iraq last week, and I want to associate myself with Senator McCain's remarks. The most important thing that can be done in Iraq now is a government of national unity, and the quicker our Sunni and Shiite and Kurd friends can get together and do that, the better off we'll be and the more stable the Middle East. And that was our push when we were there and will continue to be so.
Senator McCain, I wonder if you could react to Andy Card stepping down as Chief of Staff. Some Republicans have said there should be a wider shakeup. What are your thoughts on the White House turning things around?
I appreciate the job that Andy has done. All of us have also gotten to know Josh Bolton in our negotiations over the budget and found him to be a very tough but very good representative of the president. He understands budgetary issues as well. We know that Andy's going to do a fine job, and we wish him well. As far as the White House staff is concerned, my personal opinion is that's up to the President of the United States. I don't really have any advice or counsel on that issue.
You it as positive, Senator? I mean, there have been some of your colleagues that suggested that this would be helpful politically as well as sort of legislatively. Is there something to that?
I can't assess that, but I know that the job of White House Chief of Staff starts at 4 in the morning and ends up at midnight. This is the toughest job in America and in the world, and I think Andy deserves a rest, but he'll still have significant responsibilities. But I'm not qualified to judge what the president should do with his staff, and I certainly don't presume to give that.
The president and Secretary of State Rice, among others, have been talking about their desire to reduce the level of U.S. troops in Iraq by the end of the year. Do you think, based on what you saw over there, that's doable?
I think the biggest mistake we could make is having a calendar dictate the troop strengths over there. Only troop strength in Iraq. I think conditions on the ground are what dictates it. I think we've got some tough sledding ahead, and I would be very much opposed to any troop withdrawals at this time in my assessment of the situation. But clearly, calendar should not dictate in war troop strengths or any other battlefield tactics or strategy.
How would you characterize the progress that's being made over there in terms of is it a winnable war?
I am confident that we can and will and must win because the consequences of failure are catastrophic. The Iraqi military is doing a much better job. They are taking on a lot of the responsibilities. They've got a long way to go. But they've also have to have a government formed that they can respond to and to be responsible to.
Did you see evidence of civil war?
No. Certainly there's difficult times. Iraq al-Qaeda are tough. There's things that are tough in Ramadi. There's very difficult parts of Baghdad. American people need to understand, I think they do, this is long and hard and tough. But the benefits of success are immense, and the consequences of failure are catastrophic throughout the region. I believe the military is making progress, and they are taking over more and more of the responsibilities. But I think it's going to be a slower process than some anticipate.
Senator McCain, are you pleased with the immigration legislation? I'll let you take care of that.
Go ahead.
There you go. Are you pleased with the immigration legislation that passed yesterday?
Yes, I am.
And
I am.
what do you think will happen next?
Well, I hope we can move forward with it and then and pass it through the Senate. I'm very pleased that the President has been very supportive of a humane approach to the issue and a viable guest worker program, and I'm very pleased at the President's comments about this issue.
Well, I'm pleased on that issue of immigration.
Clearly. There's one of them.
Yeah. Well, you know, we may make progress yet. This immigration is doable. I don't think we're quite there yet with law enforcement and workplace enforcement. If we did those things right, then we could confront these other issues that are so controversial, and I believe we could work through them. I would just say I enjoyed my visit with Chairman Warner. 9 days, 8 countries, 2 days in Iraq, 2 days in Afghanistan, and my 4th trip there. I believe the Iraqi Army is coming along well. I am concerned that we need to have more support for the Iraqi police in terms of trials and judges and prisons and prosecutors to actually bring these bad guys to trial. It's got to be very frustrating and angering to an Iraqi citizen whose family member may have been killed to not have justice occur. So we've got to work on that real hard, and the infrastructure can do better, and I think we will see more improvement in the infrastructure. General Shirelli talked about rapid response teams and things of that nature that could make the real difference. And we have an extraordinary team of military leaders in Abizaid, Casey, and Shirelli there now. If you got to know them, you would think they're as talented a group of leaders as you've ever known. I certainly think so, and I believe we're well positioned. But it is a tough thing that's occurring there now. There's a real life and death struggle to create a healthy, wholesome, democratic government, and it won't be easy. But we cannot afford to lose, and will not.
Thank you. I stayed behind to clarify 2 points with Chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State. First, the Secretary of State, in response to a letter that I wrote about 10 days ago, urging that the President bring to the attention of each and every member of his cabinet the strong need for additional support to form up a judicial system, to improve health, to improve agriculture. We need a total team effort to bring about the continuing gradual success we're having in Iraq and in Afghanistan. I did this at the urging of the Ambassador Khalilzad, at the urging of General Abazad, and I find now the President and the Secretaries of State and Defense are putting their shoulder fully behind getting more people from the other departments and agencies as teammates with the soldiers. Secondly, the very important question of what occurred in the last 72 hours with that military operation. I was assured, I asked the question to General Casey. He explained the circumstances, the necessity of conducting that strike, which was conducted largely by the Iraqi forces with support with the American forces. And I urged the Secretary of Defense, he just showed me a series of pictures of the inside of those buildings. And clearly you can see all types of armament and other military paraphernalia there. There was clearly in those buildings operations going on antithetical to the coalition forces and the effort of the Iraqi people to bring about peace in their nation. And I think the sooner those pictures are out, the sooner we can dispel that there was any wanton attack by our forces on a mosque or other buildings.
And a hostage.
And a hostage. The hostage was questioned, and he clearly confirmed what was taking place in that building.
So how did the bodies get in the
Beg
mosque?
pardon?
How did the bodies get in the mosque then?
These questions are going to be addressed by the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs this afternoon at their 2 o'clock press conference. So I urge you to find the time to listen in. Anything else?
Characterize then what is being done by the insurgents or whoever was responsible for moving those bodies and what they're using as cover.
Well, it seems as though that the situation flowed immediately following. Our forces, commanders, ambassador, were trying to gather facts when the Iraqis were mounting a certain elements, a propaganda machine, and went in there and rearranged what had taken place. But fortunately, the Secretary has the pictures taken immediately following the cessation of the action. And the Secretary clearly pointed out to me on maps just now how, as the forces approached, fire came out of all of those buildings directed at the Iraqi forces and such military of the U.S. that were in support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm Congressman Tom Udall from New Mexico. On this last incident, I think this shows the intolerable situation that we have in Iraq right now, the situation we're in. You look at the American military trying to go out and get the insurgents to protect the Iraqi people, and there you have their political leaders using us as a bashing point. And it's only going to get worse. I came with a different perspective to this, and I just want to tell you a couple of quick points. First of all, several of us in the meeting called for a special envoy. We believe that the lack of formation of a national security government has reached absolute urgent proportions. And this should come from the president sending a special envoy, crackheads, get people in a room, and they don't walk out until we get a national unity government. You can't believe the erosion in terms of support by not having a national unity government. So that's number one. We need a special envoy. Our delegation, I went with Senator McCain, the two Democrats on it, Feingold and myself. We signed a statement. It'll be available to all of you as it talks about we were all unified in saying let's move forward on a bipartisan basis with a national unity government. The different perspective that I brought, I only heard one other member bring it up, was the idea that we should be redeploying outside of Iraq within this year. I brought that up at the meeting. I told the president that's where we ought to head, and the reason I say that is because the security situation, in my opinion, from being briefed and being there on the ground, is very, very dire. You can't tell as an individual, you know, I just think it's unwinnable. The Iraqis have to stand up. They now have 225,000 troops that are in the top tier of training. They have got to stand up. They have got to take this over. If we don't put some kind of outside measure on it, and this isn't dogmatic saying at the end of the year, but some kind of measure, they're not going to stand up. And let me tell you some of the briefings I heard up from the briefings in the Sunni Triangle up there. Number one, it's like an area of piracy. We were basically told, imagine piracy at its worst, that's what is going on in this area. Number two, the Europeans had hostages in this area, and they paid $80 million, we were told, to get their hostages free. This has funded the insurgency for a very, very long period of time, a very difficult situation. And Ramadi, which is very close to Fallujah and along the river there, the Sunni leaders that wanted to stand up and speak out, 15 of them have all been killed by the insurgents. So there's an incredibly bad security situation on the ground there. And I'll be happy to take a few questions.
U.S. troops need to back off so that the Iraqis will step forward.
Yes, and I think we need to do it by the end of the year. We need to redeploy. We need to redeploy to Kuwait, to any of the countries over there that'll take us, and we stay in the region. You know, the thing you're hearing from the other side, dire consequences, end of the world, the whole thing's going to collapse. I don't buy it. I don't think there's a country in the Middle East that wants to provoke a fight with the United States of America. So if we're in the region, we can prevent mischief if it occurs. But our ability to win this, if winning means the Iraqi people take over and they move forward, they're going to make slow progress. They're not going to be a democracy like the United States of America thinks of in terms of a democracy. One of you asked the Civil War question. I mean, you know, when United States thinks of civil war, we think of the southern states with an army and the northern states with an army. We're not in that situation. So the way we think of it here, it's not a civil war. But is it a complete, is it a serious deterioration in security when they bomb this mosque in Samarra and now 1,200 people have been killed? And these are like Shia going out at night, payback, killing people off, then Sunnis going out, killing people off. This is a heavily armed country. The security situation is deteriorating in the two worst areas of the Sunni Triangle and and Baghdad, the poverty in Baghdad, the slums there, and the Sunni areas. And we were told up in our briefings in Fallujah, it will be won in Baghdad. So they don't even, the military doesn't even think you win it militarily in the Sunni Triangle, you win it in Baghdad with the government and with a national unity government and them standing up and doing it. And that's the direction we've got to move. And I want to say that I admire the president calling everybody in. He had to know that me and Feingold and Ruppersberger and some of us were going to tell him things he didn't want to hear, so at least he's listening. At least he's listening. He's sat there and he's listening. You guys got anything else? Are you okay? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.